Hi, I'm Mark Lawson, president of the ECS Publishing Group, and today we're going to discuss the newest recording release in the Arsis catalog, which is entitled Light of the World, the choral music of Karen Marolli, which is performed by members of the Singers. So today I'm joined by two very distinguished people. The first is composer Karen Marolli, and the second is conductor Matt Culloton. So welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, congratulations on such a wonderful recording. I think it's just delightful, and I think a lot of people are going to enjoy listening to this. So why don't we get started with just a little bit of background, since maybe not everyone knows the two of you. Karen, give us a little bit of a background on yourself and then how you got started writing.
Well, I actually started writing, wrote my first song when I was 13. My first bit of composition experience was in songwriting, which of course I did when I was an angsty teenager. And then I started studying composition formally at Westminster Choir College, got my undergrad and my master's there. And then, of course, later on, I got my doctorate at LSU, more concentrated in conducting, choral conducting. So a lot of my work is with community choirs and with church choirs. So my composition is really kind of focused in what works well in those kinds of idioms and from boots on the ground kind of real world experience. So that influences the kinds of things that I write.
I think it shows through a lot on this recording, and there's a lot to it. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Matt, tell us about the Singers and how this all got started and how you've been involved with them over the years.
Well, I'm the artistic director of the Singers, founded the group back in 2004. So we are just entering our 18th season here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. The group that we record with is members of the Singers. I think we usually have about 24 singers when we record for ECS, but our roster is very normally around 40 singers for all of our concert subscription stuff and the other recordings and all of that. It's been a whirlwind of 18 years already, which is really hard to fathom, and good to be coming back together again slowly and reintroducing ourselves to the act of singing, listening, and intervals.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. So I've had the benefit, obviously, of working on this recording, and I just have to say, I think there's so much variety in this recording. And sometimes when you do a recording of just one composer, you start finding a lot of similarities in the writing. And I would just say that there's just so much different sounds, different feelings in the pieces that you put together, Karen. And so, Matt, I just kind of wanted to get your reflection on what it was like to work on recording these pieces over the years, and maybe some particular favorites you might have.
I always like it when I get the batch of music from the main offices there. And I always put my markings in and send them back, and then we print it up. So it gives me a sneak peek. The choir is usually sight reading, of course, when we record, but every time I see some of Karen's music, I know that I've got these special nuggets I can put in after maybe another piece that was a slog, or just kind of a moment to lift us, because the choir loves them. Anything we sing by Karen I see a few conductors just sneak a copy into their folder on their way out instead of turning it back in. Yeah, I think we all sort of share the real appreciation for the songfulness and the melodic gift that Karen's got, and her ear toward different textures and sonorities. It's like you said, it's a disc or recording that really has a lot of variety. I think of the things that are from maybe the secular realm, like the O Pulse of My Heart, versus, or alongside these church anthems that are really accessible, like Light of the World and Great Creator, just tunes that you go home singing, even after a night of recording 10 other things. It's usually a Karen Marolli piece that's stuck in our heads driving home. So anyway, I know there's a lasting quality about them, and I just love that we're able to put together a CD dedicated to these great works.
So Karen, I just hear so many different influences in this. I hear folk, I hear Irish, I hear Native American. Tell me about that. You just absorb a lot of things and then it comes out. Talk about the influences that you've experienced.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's exactly right, is that I take in, I'm very varied. My mother likes to say I was raised on a weird combination of the Beatles and like bluegrass. So, I have, of course, all of the great music that we absorb when we're in the university, and which also has a multitude of influences. But, I'm into so many different kinds of music that I think it just generally, when you're creating something that is part of you, kind of comes out of your pores. But definitely, I mean, you'll probably hear there's an influence of, like you said, Celtic and folk kinds of things, even in the church anthems. Even if I'm not using like an established fiddle tune, it has that kind of flavor in it. And I just kind of, let that happen. I think it's, a little something different than what one is used to.
I think particularly when you're taking, many of these texts are your own and original melodies. And so they're not necessarily an arrangement of a Celtic tune, for example, but they come across with that feeling. I think Undivided is one of my favorites, the one that's the first track, and that kind of has that influence as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and you like using a solo instrument often with those things.
Yeah, and sometimes the use of the solo instrument is kind of, I guess was a Baroque thing where a composer might choose to bring a chorale tune into a newly composed piece of music. And even if the congregation doesn't sing or you don't hear the words, the tune of that melody will bring to mind the ethos and the theme of that hymn. So it's kind of a similar sort of thing with me, I think.
I remember one particular recording session, I was getting calls from Matt and from David Tremblay, the recording engineer in particular, asking about the chop that you had put into one of the pieces,
Right.
And they hadn't quite experienced that. And I think the violinist didn't know quite what to do, but then it is a wonderful effect.
Yeah, it's kind of a folk effect of just dropping on the string. So it's a percussive, but it can have a melodic sound, or not a melodic sound, but a sound to it, besides just the rhythmic aspect. Mm-hmm.
We were struggling to get the violinist to really buy into that, to really like, no, believe us, do it. Drop that bow.
So Matt mentioned earlier about how in the recording sessions, they would often go home singing one of your tunes. And I think that one of the distinctive things that I hear is there's beauty, there's substance, there's a distinctiveness of style, but none of it is overly difficult. So Matt, kind of talk about that, how they're rather accessible. I mean, you have to work on sections, but not overly difficult, would you say?
I mean, I'm pretty fortunate in the situation we're in where, it's great readers who pick things up quick, but these works with completely amateur song-loving church choirs of any size, nobody's going to get frustrated with the learning curve, and I think that just means there's an immediate buy-in from the singers. And, once they're cheering for a piece, it comes together even quicker. And there's so much to love about it that even passages that do need a little bit of work, which we all enjoy, right? Anyway, we don't want to avoid it. The piece of music is already in the choir's good graces, so they're going to work hard on it too. But it's a real gift to be able to write music that learns quickly, but is also fulfilling to sing and satisfying. Because I always try to remind myself, especially with my church choir, which is, of course, 95% volunteer, that our time with our church choirs is often what they consider to be their artistic outlet. Some will say, of course, that it's the way they choose to perform ministry and that kind of a thing. But at the core of it, it's their artistic outlet for the week. And for the majority of them, it's their one artistic moment. So these pieces really do let you feel like you are creating something artful and meaningful and of substance, no matter if it comes together in one rehearsal or if it's something that you get to work on for a number of weeks before the performance. So it's a gift to be able to write accessible music that does fulfill that artistic need.
So I think one thing that the digital services are doing these days is allowing conductors to point, particularly the singers in their choir, toward recordings that they might enjoy. And I'm thinking that this is a really good one to point to, your choir members toward, because they can hear the singers and they also experience new material at the same time. So I think that's a great advantage of these days, to, particularly on Spotify or one of the services, to do that. Well, I would encourage everyone watching this to pull up on your favorite streaming services, Light of the World, choral music of Karen Marolli, and take a listen. I'd also say that there are wonderful recordings on there from the singers, and we released a recording last year called On Christmas Morn that were the Christmas music of Matthew Culloton. So there are other things on there that you might want to check out as well. So thank you both for all that you do and for this wonderful gift. I hope that your remaining days in COVID go okay, and that we're all back to performing and singing very soon.
Yeah,
so thank you.
You're here. Thanks, Karen, for the beautiful music.
Oh, thank you, Matthew, for the beautiful recordings.
Thanks.
Well, have a good day.